So, what we're going to focus on tonight is nutrition. I really want you to understand three major things and come away from this meeting tonight with a better handle on these three aspects of nutrition, which are what to eat, when to eat, and then how to do this in the right way. So, I feel like a lot of times when we look at nutrition or we talk to clients, people are consistently searching for what foods to eat. And there's a lot of misinformation about when they should be eating or how we should take things in. And I really want to clear all that up today. So we're going to start with what to eat. This is an incredibly searched question when it comes to what people are looking up on Google. And it makes sense. We live in a very instant gratification culture, and people are always searching for what is that one thing I have to add, or maybe that magic food that makes a huge difference for you. But realistically, there are foods that are better than others, that have higher quality and better properties. But we're not going to talk about a magic food. We're just going to talk about a way of eating. So when we say what to eat, what do we focus on in our Restart program? And what do we coach our clients on? Outside of getting rid of inflammation, which Patrick touched on in the last meeting, eliminating those things that create the inflammation, we want to supply our body with two primary things at our meals: 2 servings of vegetables and a good quality protein source. We're going to have some carbs and starches as well, but I really want to focus on these 2 big things. If you're wondering or are thinking now, you have to have 2 servings of vegetables with every meal, and maybe that doesn't sound appealing to you for your breakfast time. I want to help you understand why this is so important. Number one, our vegetables have a lot of what we call micronutrients. So that's the only big word we're going to go through today. But a micronutrient just means something. When we break this down, we have our macros, the big ones: fat, protein, carbs, and then micro are all the other little nutrients. These are really, really important. So think of your macro as kind of like the engine of your car, and micro might be more like the oil. It doesn't sound as important, your engine versus your oil, but if we don't pay attention to that oil and we never change that, or let that run out, dry up, it's going to total our vehicle. And thinking of our body as that vehicle, these little micronutrients help continue and perpetuate a lot of the processes that happen in the body. So when people are lacking energy, when they can't sleep well, when they're having an inability to lose weight or build muscle, these are things that we really want to look at, because if your body doesn't even have the baseline stuff that it needs, it's going to be really, really hard to make a change. So the other thing we talk about in the what to eat is getting a good quality protein source. That to us means something that's sourced in the right way. So if you're talking about fish, that's wild caught versus farmed. We want to have good, healthy, organic meats. So think of your fish, your chicken, your steak, and those are going to be kind of staples within our meals. When we talk about how much protein we want, the minimum, and not to make this super mathematical, but is roughly about 0.8 grams per pound of body weight up to 1. So what that means is if I weigh 175 pounds, I roughly want to eat 175 grams of protein. So that can sound like a lot, and I want to help people understand how they could fit this in and how we break that down. So if I have about 30 grams in each meal, so breakfast, lunch, dinner, 30, 30, 30, that puts me at 90. That's a far cry from my 175 or 180. So ways that I can supplement this is if I do 2 protein shakes, maybe one's after a workout and one closer to bed or after dinner, I can get 30 in each of those. That brings me up to 150. Now to get 150 up to 60, 70, those extra 20 grams, that's easy. I can split that into adding a little bit more on a meal, or that's 1 protein bar. The reason that I'm not saying to have 70, 70, 70 or really big numbers for the meals are our body can only break down roughly about 20 to 30 grams of protein in a given intake. So think of going to fuel up your car. I can't get my gas for the month in 1 trip at the gas station. I can only fill up what my tank can use, and then when that drains down, we fill it up again. So if I put in 70 grams of protein, my body can really only access and use about that 30. And if we're really overeating on the protein, it becomes hard in our kidneys. Your body has to find something to do with that. We can't just store it as stored protein to use for later. Ultimately, it's going to get converted to fat and stored if it's not something viable and usable. So you're kind of wasting if we're going way above that. caveat to it is there's going to be times that you eat more than 30 grams. If you have a good sized steak, and depending on the sides that you have, that's a lot of protein. And that's why we allow for some of this wiggle room to get to your number. So what I would recommend is that you know what you weigh, and then do the minimum math of times 0.8 to figure out the low end of kind of where you should be, and then start to play around with ballparking how much you get in these meals. So one bonus that I want to add here, now that we have a better handle on what to eat, being our 2 servings of vegetables paired with a good quality protein, there's something called food sequencing. So now for eating the same exact food, but just by doing it in a little different way can be extremely beneficial. So what we want to do is eat our vegetables first, followed by our proteins and fats, and then our carbs last. The reason for this is when we chew and we break down these molecules, the vegetables are still the biggest. Your protein and fat is medium size, and those carbohydrates are like grains of sand. So if I have a funnel from my mouth to my stomach, and we put in those vegetables first, I put in those bigger molecules. Now I put this medium-sized molecules second, and then my grains of sand, my carbohydrates last. Now, a lot less of those carbohydrates are gonna hit my bloodstream. Well, a lot less are gonna hit, but they're gonna hit a lot slower because it has to go past all those other things. Where if I do this order of operations in the other way, and I have my carbohydrates first, 100% of those grains of sand are gonna go straight down that funnel, hit the bloodstream, going to make it to my stomach. Why does this matter? Because this can make a tremendous amount or a tremendous difference in how much weight you lose in a year. They did a study of only 6 weeks where the group ate the same exact food and we did the same exact exercise, except one of the groups did the food sequencing. What they found at the end of 6 weeks was that that group lost 50% more weight. So for eating the same exact food and doing the same exact exercise, but just eating it in a different order, they got a massive change because we're able to lower these glucose spikes. That's a whole other topic, but we're ultimately able to lessen the inflammation in our body and make sure that the most important macronutrients and micronutrients are taken away from first all the vegetables and then all the proteins and fats. And then those carbohydrates come in, and that's more like our quick energy. So it's allowing our body to kind of utilize these things in the right way. The next thing that we're going to talk about, now that we have a better idea of what to eat, being our good vegetables paired with a protein, when do we eat? People ask us all the time, should I be intermittent fasting? Should I have 1 meal a day? Should I do a prolonged fast? I look at those different styles of eating as great levers to pull when we're trying to make body composition changes. And for the purpose of tonight and what we're going through, we want to start with what is the baseline first. And that is eating a breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner. You may have heard before that having multiple small meals throughout the day maybe increases your metabolism. There is no research for that. If you can find a paper and show me that it actually improves and increases metabolism by doing that way compared to the 3, happy to look it over. I've never ever seen something to actually support and prove this. The only reason that we would have more than the 3 meals is exactly back to my first point, if we're trying to get additional protein. But that's a big difference than me just strictly dividing my day into maybe 6 to 8 meals. So I want to have 3 primary meals: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I want to share a few caveats here. For myself personally, my household is just myself and my girlfriend. So getting ready in the morning, I really just have to worry about myself. She's already out of my household. So in the morning time, that is a non-stressful, like prior to work, I'm going through my routine. Eating is not a big deal for me to do right then. And the reason I say this is on the converse side of that, maybe you're a mother of six in your household, and you're getting 5 kids ready for school in the morning, cooking breakfast, getting kids dressed, out the door, probably driving them or bringing them to a bus stop, whatever it is. That is a stressful morning. And ultimately, when we're stressed out, we're in what's called a fight or flight response. When we're in that response, the body's not primed to break down our food and utilize it for energy. So in that case, I might suggest you still have breakfast, but we could push that eating time back to maybe about 10 o'clock as the latest, so that we can have this intake, but not have it affect us negatively because our body's stressed out. Because even if I take in a really good intake, that nice veggie and a protein, but I don't necessarily take it in at an ideal time for me, it's not going to be as beneficial. So with that being said, if you have some variation in your day or flexibility, meaning when you eat those 3 meals is a little more variable day to day, an extra thing I'm going to ask you to do is, again, kind of back to order of operations. If we can stack our meal for lunch, especially right after a workout or right before, that's going to be a lot more beneficial. And when we talk about getting protein in, if I have my lunch, that's about 30 grams of protein, and then I go work out directly after, my body is really going to utilize a lot of that fuel that just came in. Because once I start to get active, my body is asking, do we need to store the fuel that just came in for later? Or is Sam being active right now? And we could use that fuel. As soon as I start my workout, my body's going to answer to the latter. Yes, he's being active right now, and we should utilize this fuel. So we can absorb and utilize a good amount of that protein. And then if I have my shake right after, this is where now I could maybe have 30 grams on each of those, but have a way better chance of my body utilize a high percent of that. If you can't change when you work out, the thing that I would ask that's going to make your life a little easier and help you feel better is right after your meal to either go for a 10-minute walk, or if you can't do that, you want to do 30 reps of a body weight exercise. So that could be push-ups against the wall, that could be calf raises, or my favorite is an air squat. You're working some big muscles. It's easy to do a quick 30 reps. And that still hits on the principle that I was speaking on of convincing my body that I'm going to use this fuel. So what you'll notice by doing that, just those 30 squats after a meal, is you don't really feel that crash. You're not going to feel so overly full, and you're going to feel like you actually utilize that nutrition a lot better. So 10 minutes of activity after the meal, if we can't work out, and have the meal right before or right after. So kind of a little hack there to add in, but that works for every single meal that you go through in the day. So the last thing that I'm going to talk about is, how do we do this? So how do we eat consistently in this way? So I'm going to break down first breakfast, lunch, and dinner options, and then a few caveats for busy versus have a little bit more time. So first off, for breakfast, we want to have our veggies and protein. A couple things that are easy that we go through in our program, 2 recipes. There's one for egg bites where we can cook those ahead of time. Super easy. It's just like those egg bites at Starbucks, where you can put in whatever you want. That's bacon or sausage. We can add in our vegetable. So maybe spinach, you can have some tomato, onion, pepper. We can really add in a lot of things. So that's ready for you, and it's easy to make in the morning. If you're that busy mom, great option for you to have maybe after the kids are gone. Or if you're that person that just kind of runs out in the morning, great option. If you're super busy and want to make something in the morning, but trying to be time conscious, a mix of a greens powder and a great protein, such as Fix Essential Protein, is a great option, because now we're getting our protein, we're getting our greens, and you're getting out the door, but we're taking advantage of a time that we can get in that protein. Because as I said, you're not going to be able to make up with like a 60-gram intake in one meal and hope that you utilize all of it. So for the really fast option, we have the shake. Second is pre-making something that's breakfast specific. Third option is when you cook your dinner, overcook a little bit. So we have a tendency to make like 2.5 times servings at our household, so that if we want to have a little bit more that night, it's there. But ultimately, that's going to afford me something to eat for breakfast. I'm not married to eating breakfast foods for breakfast. Feel free to eat whatever food at different times. It might take a little bit to get used to. And a lot of people aren't normalized having vegetables in the morning. But this is a good, easy way to do it. You're already cooking your dinner. Take advantage of that and kind of carry it over to the next morning. For our lunches, I'd recommend a salad is an easy way to do this, because we can mix and match a lot of different things. We can do the salad with steak on top, chicken, fish. We can keep subbing things out. Plus, we can play with the different toppings. Also, you can figure out protein-wise about how much do you get from that salad. And then when we swap things out, you kind of have a ballpark idea of what you're getting. Second thing is, if you go out for lunch a lot from your work, figure out a couple of healthy spots that are close by to you. And you can always send questions at info@fixmedicalgroup.com, and we're happy to give you recommendations based off where you're at. But finding a good, healthy restaurant that has an option for you, so those days mentally you just need to get out of the office, you need to have an option that serves you. Last one for lunch, again, is prepping. So if you want to overcook a little bit on the dinner, bring that for lunch. I'm not a huge advocate of prepping like your week ahead. And personally, I use a meal prep company to help with breakfast and lunch for me. Really enjoy cooking dinners, and that kind of leaves me a little additional meals, whether that's a breakfast that I want to have based on leftovers or something that I want to bring for lunch. Let's see, what was the other part I want to go over? All right, so a couple different options there on like how we can do the meals. Some faster options. Ultimately, overcooking a little bit so we have something left over, great way. But the big key here is you have to plan ahead. This is something I coach every single client I've ever worked with on, is on Saturday or Sunday, just look at your week ahead. This can get really detailed depending on what you do and what we're trying to accomplish. But in the interest of just food and exercise, look at when your workouts are going to happen. Be aware of your short days and your long days and where you can fit a workout in. Do we need to do it in the morning instead of night? When it comes to food, where are we going to get our nutrition each day? You might realize, oh man, my Wednesday is actually really long because I have an additional meeting at the end of the day. How am I going to make sure I get my food? So just having that forethought and actually looking at the schedule prior to getting into it, because that's where most people get thrown off. We don't have time to go to the grocery store or go pick things up. And in subsequent sessions, we'll teach you guys how to, with the same amount of time for the same amount of money, shop really healthy. So we don't want that to become the excuse. And really how we avoid that's planning ahead. So I don't want to go too long out over time here. I kept you for 2 awesome extra bonus minutes, but I want to summarize what we went through, which is what do we eat? When do we eat? How do we eat it? What do we eat? We want to have 2 servings of vegetables with every single meal that enters our body with a great protein. What you stack with as far as that carb, we can get into a little bit more. Those healthy carbs like sweet potato, we're fine with white potato. It just comes down to how you prepare it. As long as we're not deep frying it or using negative oils, we're okay with a lot of things as long as it's a whole food that came from the earth. When do we eat? We want to break this into our 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, giving our body enough time in between. So we fuel up at the gas tank, we use that gas to get us to lunch, we're on empty, we fuel up again. If we have too much and we can't utilize all that gas and then you gas up again, we have to store that excess fuel as fat to be used later for energy. And then the last one is how. How do we make all this work? We got to plan ahead. You have to have a strategy by looking at your week and then figuring out, hey, am I going to need to prep some meals so that I can cover that? Or maybe you're done and you're out of work at a reasonable time each day. And it's really easy to stop at the grocery store and do your dinner each night. Figure out what works for you. If a meal prep is better for you, like a done for you meal prep, we can figure out options that work for that. If it's better for you to kind of self prep by overcooking a little bit, you can figure out ways that that works. But I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. And I hope to see everybody back next Wednesday, where Dr. Robeck will be going over some other great tips. So thank you again for joining us on Fix at 6 for Wellness Wednesday. We can't wait to see you again. If you have any questions, or there's anything I didn't answer, or you're curious about, or any other reason you want to reach out to us, please send that to info@fixmedicalgroup.com. Have a great night.